Hey everyone, this is Kyle Jetsel. I'm your driven autism dad. Hey, I want to welcome you today to this event. Just want to start by letting you know my name and who I am. My name is Kyle Jetsel, and I am the driven autism dad. I'm the father of six kids, and we have our two middle sons are on the autism spectrum. And we have what many people want. We have what we call a top 1% happy family, and I have what I call a top 1% happy marriage. But it wasn't always that way. As we raised our kids, there was a time when we were in real trouble as a family. Although we had done everything that the autism experts had suggested we do, the experts and the therapists and um, and the specialists, we were still on what we called the autism roller coaster. And you guys probably know what I mean by that. The autism roller coaster is basically when simple things can make us very happy, but there are also difficult moments in our homes that are very, very difficult for us to manage. So I'll never forget this autism roller coaster. I'll never forget the day that my wife decided to go out with some friends, and she left me at home with my son Eric. He's more severe on the autism spectrum, and I decided while she was gone to teach him, my son Eric, how to say "I love you" to his mom. And so all day long, she was gone 6 or 7 hours with her friends. All day long, I was working with him to try to get him to say, I love you. And when she finally returned, I said, Hey, I've got something to show you. And she and I set my son down and I kind of prompted him to say it. And he said in broken English to my wife, he said, I love you. And we both had these tears of joy because he was about 6 years old at the time. And he never really had said very many words at all. He was pretty much nonverbal in that moment. And when he said that, we both had tears of joy. And it was this wonderful thing. And we were just on this really high of high moments. Well, within a few days, he got very upset and found a knife in the kitchen and came at us with a knife and tried to get us with a knife. And so, we went from this very, very high moment, this exciting moment, this moment of love and happiness and joy to him attacking us with a knife within just a few days. And that was the very bottom of the roller coaster. Or the time I remember when he was almost 9 years old, and at that moment we had four kids in diapers, and so we had diapers everywhere. It was horrible, but uh, I'll never forget when we finally potty trained him. He was so happy, we were so happy, and we were on this high again. My wife and I, we just smiled from ear to ear because we had finally been working on this for years and had finally got him potty trained. Well, within a few days, again, he got upset during a meltdown and had smashed his head through a plate glass window. And while I was at the emergency room getting him stitched up for this injury to his head, I was holding him still, and you guys know how that is when you're trying to hold a 9 year old still for anything. I was holding him still, and I thought this is horrible. I mean, so we went from this high of finally potty training him to this really low, and we kept going through this cycle of good things that were just typical things that typical kids should do that he was doing that were so great. But then we'd go down to these depths, and it felt like uh, the hard parts were getting more and more frequent, and the good parts were getting less and less frequent. And we were really struggling as a family. My relationship with my wife at this point was damaged. My relationship with my typical kids was in trouble. My two older typical sons at the time, because there was so much stress in our home based on meltdowns and all kinds of things like that, that we were just really in trouble. But I'll never forget one morning. It kind of all came to a head in our home, and we were just struggling. We didn't know what to do. It was almost as if we were being asked to take a test for a class that we never took, that there was no guide for. And if we failed the test, we failed our kids. And so we were under tremendous stress. My wife and I were at odds with each other. My typical kids would typically hide. They would be afraid when things started to go wrong. And it was very difficult in our home. And I remember everything changed one morning, one Saturday morning at about 6:30 in the morning. We were awakened by my son from a blood curdling scream, this really, really loud scream. And, uh, we didn't know what was going on. He was nonverbal. Uh, and so he couldn't tell us what the problem was, but he was screaming uncontrollably. And, most of the time, meltdowns can last anywhere from, 15 minutes to maybe an hour at the most. Well, this one was not stopping. This one lasted for 4 hours. So this was a 4 hour meltdown. And every time we start to get him calmed down again, he would ramp back up and get more and more angry and scream and yell and throw things at us. He was throwing things, he was smashing holes in walls, he was kicking things, he was tearing our home up. And it felt as if our home was being hit by a tornado. At the same time, it was an earthquake during a flood. So it was really bad in our home. Well, by the time we finally got him calmed down, it was probably it was about 4 hours later. So that morning, and it was, I knew that our day was going to be ruined. And this morning, unlike a lot of times, my wife and I were so stressed out, and our nerves were so frazzled that we kind of turned on each other. And I think sometimes that happens when you're in very difficult, stressful situations. Sometimes you turn on the people that you should love the most. And that's what happened to us this Saturday morning. And I remember we got into this big argument. And the longer we argued, the more I realized it wasn't going to stop. And my wife had had it with me. I was frustrated. She was frustrated. And so I grabbed my keys and put them in my pocket. And I headed out the front door. And I remember standing on the front porch thinking to myself, this isn't what I signed up for. I was mad. I was upset. I was exhausted. I was just angry at the world because this isn't what I signed up for as a family. And I knew this wasn't healthy for our family. So, I remember having my keys in my pocket, looking at my car, thinking, you know what, I'm going to leave and I'm never coming back. This is it. I'm going to start a new life somewhere else, a life that's not so stressful, that I have more control over. And I remember in that moment, a memory of my father passed through my mind. And it was when I was playing in a sporting event, and it was near the end of the game. It was baseball, for those of you that are familiar with baseball. And there was two outs, and we only needed one out for the game to be over. And the ball was hit to me, and I made an error, and I didn't make the play. And so the inning kept going on, and more people got on base, and they won, and we lost, and it was all my fault because I hadn't made that play. Well, I remember in that moment, my dad kneeled down. I was about 11 years old, and my dad kneeled down to me, and he said, and I said to him, you know what, Dad, I wish the ball hadn't come to me, because then we could have won the game. And my dad kneeled down on my level and said, you know what, Kyle, that's not the way we do things. We want to be the reason for success or failure. You don't ever want to go down without the biggest fight that you can give. You don't ever want to go down without the biggest fight. So don't ever give up. If it's important, don't ever give up. Do your very, very best and let the chips fall where they may. You're going to have some failures, you're going to have some successes, but don't ever run away from your responsibilities. Be the reason for your success. Well, in that moment, I was really struggling because I had done everything we were supposed to do. I'd taken him to the autism experts and the specialists and the therapists, and I'd done all these things, but we were still struggling. And I realized in that moment that I had been outsourcing our family's happiness by trying to get them, the experts and therapists and specialists, the autism folks outside our home, to solve our problems. I had been outsourcing our family's happiness to them, hoping they would solve our problems. And I want you to know they did a great job. The experts and therapists and specialists, they do what they do, and they do it well, but they're not really helping us solve our in-home, at-home autism challenges, like meltdowns and defiance and arguing kids and exhaustion and burnout and rage and violence and biting and kicking and screaming and all those things that our kids do. they weren't there to solve those problems. And I realized in that moment that it was up to me. I was going to have to be the reason for the success or failure in our home. And I realized in that moment I needed to take responsibility and that I needed to change me. And I remember, one of the other things my father had always taught me to do is that we can get help from God. And so, I went and kneeled and prayed about this, and I realized in that those moments of prayer that I was the problem. I remember feeling like God told me, you know what? Problem is not your kids, and the problem is not your wife. The problem is you. Fix you, and watch what happens. And I remember thinking that this is fantastic, and that kind of set me on a path of what I call becoming the driven. I call myself the driven autism dad now because I'm really driven to figure out how to give my kids, how to lower stress in my home. Number one. Number two, uh, how to become the very best parent I could be. Me personally, the very best parent I can be for my kids on the spectrum, and get trained and get tools and techniques. And I'm going to share some of those with you that I learned real quick here. But that was the key for me, is really is how do I lower stress for my kids and myself and my family? How do I become the greatest parent I can be for them? And number three is, how do I put them in a position to achieve their full potential, no matter what that potential may be? And that really drove me, and I became the driven autism dad. And so, as I started to look at this, I realized I had read a lot of parenting books, and I thought I was a good dad I think I was until I started facing these unique challenges in our own home. And I think one of the things that really struck me in that moment is I realized that every child on the autism spectrum is unique, and every child is different, and they all respond differently to different parenting uh, ways we do our parenting. Um, and every family is unique. So I couldn't just plug into a formula that I could follow. And so I started to think I have to create my own plan for when things start to go wrong. What I came up with is, as I studied different people who had solved major challenges in their life, is there were some very clear similarities in solving major problems. And we had a major problem. Our problem is our home was a combat. It felt like we were, I mean, it was, there was so much stress, and there were so many meltdowns all the time, and so much behavior and difficulties, biting, kicking, screaming, and smashing TVs, and so many things that were difficult that we needed a unique plan. And so as I started to study this, I realized I needed to create a framework for the challenges that my son was facing and how would I manage them. And so I came up with something pretty interesting I call the COST framework. And the COST framework stands for, the C stands for challenge in COST, the O stands for objective, the S stands for strategy, and the T in COST stands for tactics. So what I decided to do was create these worksheets, and I think I don't have one next to me, but whenever I was faced with a new challenge in our family, like behavior, or arguing kids, or biting kids, or meltdowns, I would write out the challenge and kind of write it all out real good so I could understand what the full challenge was. Then I would write out my long-term objective, and it always started with, I want to approach these challenges in a spirit of love. And what did I want long term to be the effect of my strategy, which was the S? And I would name it something unique, and I'll show you how I did that with shortly. But and the T in cost is tactics. The next time I faced the challenge, what steps was I going to take every time? And the most important step, I think, was uh, put myself in a state of love. So what I'd like to do is share with you how, and I want you to know I created these cost strategy formulas, and I wrote them up for meltdowns, potty training, getting my kids to eat, uh, defiant kids. I have one son that's oppositional defiance disorder. Uh, I have one of my sons who's on the spectrum that likes to argue. Uh, Kids pressing hot buttons when they say things or do things they knew would make you mad. Uh, I create a strategy for worrying too much. What's going to happen to them if something happens to me? I created a strategy for being burnt out and exhausted. I created a strategy for meltdowns, for rage, for violence, for biting, kicking, screaming, smashing things, walls, glass, iPads, TVs, all these things. I created all these strategies. I had hundreds of strategies. But the one I want to share with you today and show you how this cost formula works is one I call winning every meltdown, because I think every parent who faces at-home autism challenges has faced a meltdown. And you know how meltdowns are, right? They can, depending on what time of the day they are and how long they last, meltdowns can ruin your day. And if it happens in the morning, the whole day's ruined sometimes, or it feels like that. And so I didn't want that, right? I wanted to be able to face those meltdowns with strength and courage and kindness and love for my kids on the spectrum. And so I came up with a strategy called Winning Every Meltdown. That was my strategy name. And the challenge was, we'll go back to cost. The challenge was we were facing multiple meltdowns a day and it was ruining our family. We ended up, the challenge was we ended up not going places anymore. We didn't go out to eat with friends. We wouldn't go to the park because we were afraid of meltdowns. And so we were becoming isolated as a family. Our extended family wasn't really inviting us to things anymore. These were all the challenges. My long-term objective is that I wanted to manage these meltdowns in a way that showed my son I loved him no matter what. And that's where I talk about parenting challenges in a spirit of love. I wanted to be at my very best when he was at his worst so that he could feel my love, not just me say that I loved him, but feel my love in those big, scary moments. And ultimately, I wanted to shorten the duration of those meltdowns long term. And long term, I also wanted to shorten or to minimize the number of meltdowns if I could catch them early enough. So I came up, that was my objective. So the challenge was too many meltdowns. The objective was to how to face those in a spirit of love and kindness. My strategy, I named it Winning Every Meltdown, and my tactics were very simple. And I'll share those with you right now. I created what I called an acronym called APWAC. And APWAC stands for APWEC. And the A stands for assume. I didn't want, why are we so surprised when our kids have meltdowns? I'm always amazed when I see parents that are shocked when their kids have meltdowns in difficult moments. Well, that's what they do. Why are we so surprised? So assuming, the A in APWAC is assuming there will be meltdowns. We should assume there will be meltdowns. And that way we're not surprised and we're not scared and we're not walking around on eggshells trying not to cause the next meltdown. So that's the A in APWAC. The P stands for prepare. And you want to prepare yourself mentally and physically to face this meltdown in a spirit of love, right? And so, I thought about how can I prepare myself physically? Well, I can stand up straight. I can feel confident. I can physically put myself in a state of productivity. And, if you think about it, you can change your mindset just by changing your body. And you can change your body by changing your mindset, and they work hand in hand. So, and I want you to think about this, preparing your body. I want you to think about something you've done that was incredible. And when you do that, you end up standing up straight and you feel that confidence, right? And you say, I can do this, right? And so preparing yourself physically, standing up straight, knowing you're going to do well, and then prepare yourself mentally and tell yourself, I can do this. I've done it before. I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to win this meltdown, right? And so that's prepare yourself. So assume there will be meltdowns and prepare yourself mentally and physically. The W in APWAC is win. And you don't win by stopping your child from having a meltdown or any of those things that we normally think of as winning, or winning the argument, or whatever it is that you feel like winning is. You win through kindness and patience and love. Okay. And that's important. An important thing to remember is that when our kids have meltdowns, they don't need us joining in their chaos. They need us to be the calm in their storm. And when you're kind and patient and loving through the storm, that will calm your child. It will calm you. And that leads me to the E in APWAC. So you've got to assume there will be meltdowns, prepare yourself mentally and physically, win the W through kindness and patience and love. And the E in APWAC stands for energy and endure. And this is interesting because I remember growing up, I had these moments where I thought I was exhausted, but I realized I always have this, all of us have this little bit of extra energy. And if we go into these meltdowns and we win through kindness and patience and love, the reason we're so exhausted after meltdowns is because we're fighting them, right? And when you're fighting or you're yelling or screaming or frustrated or angry, those emotions can sap your energy. But when you face these emotions in a spirit of love, it can give you energy. And that's a very powerful thing because if you think about facing a meltdown, assuming there will be meltdowns, preparing yourself mentally and physically and winning through kindness and patience and love, and you endure that, that's the other E. You have energy and you endure till the very end. You're not kind for 20 minutes and then the last 10 minutes lose your patience and join the chaos because that's going to drain you. But when you're kind and patient and loving throughout the process, you can endure and you can have that energy you want. You've always got that little reserve of energy. And if that meltdown happens in the morning, you can go back to being happy. And then the C in APWAC. So assume there will be meltdowns. A, prepare yourself mentally and physically. W. P, win through kindness and patience and love. That's the W. E is have energy and endure. And the C in APWAC is celebrate. I think all too often we as parents don't celebrate our simple successes. And we really need to be more conscious of that and start doing that. And the way I celebrate is funny. After my son has a meltdown and I do everything the right way, I will walk away and I will say, yes, yes, yes. And I celebrate myself and my actions and the love that I've expressed to my kids. And this helps motivate me and gives me more energy to face the next meltdown. Now, here's what I want you to know. If you'll follow this process, APWAC, APWEC, assume there will be meltdowns, prepare yourself mentally and physically, win through kindness and patience and love, have energy and endure, and then celebrate your success, it will change the way you view meltdowns and it'll change the way you address meltdowns. And when we change our patterns, our kids change their patterns. But the coolest part of all is this. When you can do these things, when you can follow this process, when the next time a meltdown comes, you don't have to be worried about it or think, what am I going to do, or get frustrated or angry or discouraged. You just act like them. Okay. Assume, prepare, win, energy, and endure, celebrate. You just act like your kids the next time they have meltdowns. Now, and I'll never forget the first time I did this and my wife noticed this. We were getting ready to go to the park one Saturday. We had decided to kind of risk it. And we were going to leave in about 30 minutes. And I heard my son upstairs bang something. And I realized in that moment that he was having a meltdown. So I told my wife, I got this. I ran upstairs real fast and I act him. I assumed there would be a meltdown. I prepared myself mentally and physically. I won through kindness and patience and love. Um, I had energy and endured, and I celebrated. And I came back downstairs to my wife, and I said, "Okay, we're ready to go. He's okay." And she said, "Wait a minute, what just happened?" I said, "He had a meltdown, but everything's okay." And she said, "You know what, Kyle? It's not healthy for you to do that." And I said, "Not healthy for me to do what?" And she said, "It's not healthy for you to suppress your anger." And I said, "I'm not suppressing my anger. I act him." And she said, "You what?" And I said, "Yeah, I act him." And she said, "What is that?" And I had a chance to tell her. Assume, prepare, win, energy and endure, celebrate. And she said, "Oh, that's awesome." I said, "Yeah, we're ready. And if he has a meltdown at the park, I'll act like him there." And she said, "Okay." So we went to the park, and sure enough, after about a half hour being at the park, the swings were going, and he couldn't swing because somebody else was on the swings, and he had a meltdown. And as I saw him have this meltdown, I looked at my wife and I said, "I got it. I'll go act like him." Right. And I ran over there, and sure enough, assume, prepare, win, energy and endure, celebrate. And I stayed with him, and finally, after a few minutes, somebody got off one of the swings, and he was allowed to get on one of the swings. And I looked over back at my wife, and she had like 4 or 5 ladies around her, and I could see them talking to her and her talking to her. And once he got on the swing, I headed back over to my wife, and she said, "Hey, Kyle, tell him what you're doing." I said, "What?" And she said, "Tell him about APWAC." And so I got it in that moment. I got a chance to share what I call good autism awareness, right? Where I got to share with them my strategy, my tactics for winning every meltdown, right? how do we face these things in a spirit of love? And that was based on the fact that I had created that strategy through my cost framework. What is the challenge? That's the C. What is my long-term objective? What is the strategy? The S. And what are the tactics? T. And so I got to show them that, and I got to share that with all these individuals at the park. And it was interesting because that was kind of the start of us starting to turn around the stress and chaos in our home. And we started creating these strategies for everything, every event, every challenge we faced in our home that was difficult or frustrating or discouraging or made us mad. We would pull out our cost worksheet. What's the challenge, the C? What's the objective, the O, long term? What's the strategy, the S? And what's the T, the tactics? And we would create a list of tactics being actions we would take every single time. And in doing so, we started to create these different strategies. And I've got a workbook now full of cost frameworks. Like I said, for everything from winning every meltdown to potty training, to getting your kids to eat, to defying kids, to arguing kids, to burnout and exhaustion. My wife created some strategies for that, to rage, violence, biting, kicking, screaming, smashing of property, all these things. We just started creating these cost worksheets and creating the tactics we were going to follow every time we faced one of those big events. And it absolutely changed our family. And here's what was interesting to us. My wife and I quit fearing meltdowns. We started to take them to the park again. We started taking them to the, out to dinner or to friends' houses because we were unafraid of the next meltdown because we assumed one would happen and we app wiped him every time. And as people started to watch us and they started to ask us what we were doing, it started to create this world where we could help individuals, other parents that have kids on the spectrum. Now, it's interesting because, as I come across different parents, way too many of us will say things, well, that won't work for me because my child is unique or my child is different. And that's true. But the really cool part about what I'm teaching and what I'm sharing with parents is that you can create your own personalized plan for your family by using this cost worksheet. And you just write a column. What is the cost or what is the challenge? What is the long-term objective? What is the strategy name? I'm going to give it a name. And what are the tactics? What are the step-by-step process I'm going to follow every single time my kids have meltdowns, or every single time my kids, I'm working through potty training, or every single time they're defiant, or what about the steps I'm going to take every time that my kids press my hot buttons and try to upset me, or say things they shouldn't say to me or their brothers or sisters, or sibling rivalries, or whatever the challenge you're facing is, you can use this cost formula to face that challenge and have a plan. And I think that's the biggest thing we as parents with kids on the spectrum face is how do we create a plan for these things, right? Because all too often, we face these challenges and we don't really know what to do. We just default into whatever parenting we've done in the past. And obviously, because there's so much stress, it's not working for us. So it's really up to us to face these challenges, create a plan. Many of us have read hundreds of books. We've watched, hundreds of hours of online training, and we're still struggling at home. And this is the answer to that, to creating your own unique plan for your family and create those worksheets and share them with each other and share them with your typical kids and engage them in helping you create a world where, you can face this stress and you can lower that stress for your kids. You can become the greatest parent in the world. You can train yourself. You can become trained through your own strategies, creating your own strategies and creating your own plans. So that's kind of where we're at with what I do. Now, I have a lot of people say, how can I work with you, Kyle? Because I'm an autism parenting coach. And I don't do a lot. What I do is unique in that we don't focus necessarily on the child's behavior. We focus on the strategies that we as parents create to address those behaviors and to address those meltdowns. And so the cool part about that is you as the parent, the only thing you really do control is you. And that starts in your mind, and having a plan changes the dynamics. And it's really cool when I see parents start to create their own strategies, or I'll help them create strategies and they'll apply those strategies And their kids, when you change your patterns, what typically happens now is your kids will go into meltdown mode and you'll go into meltdown mode. It's natural. It's not your fault. It's natural. It's what happens to us when we're hit with fight or flight. And so when you change your patterns when faced with those challenges, it automatically starts to change your kids' patterns. The best part of all, though, is that we're always doing this in the spirit of love. Every strategy I've created for myself or for any parent or work with to create for them is designed in a spirit of love. That's the key component. Uh, we're not doing things unless we can do it in a spirit of love. And that's the first question. How can I do this in a spirit of love? So families that want to work with me, there's three ways to work with me. One is I have a Facebook page that I post on almost daily. It's called Parenting at Home Autism Challenges in a Spirit of Love. I know that's a long title, but that's kind of, I feel like that describes what I do. And you can go there. Everything is free. You just join. Again, Parenting at Home Autism Challenges in a Spirit of Love. Go join me on Facebook. I post videos. I post little tips and techniques. I post training. I post success stories from other families, all kinds of things on that page. The second way is I have an online video program where I share with you the strategies we've created for our family. And if you want to try that, I would recommend you send me an email. My email is kyle@drivenautismdad.com. Pretty simple. kyle@drivenautismdad.com. Send me an email and just write coaching in there, and I will respond personally to that. And we can schedule a time maybe to talk, or I can share with you how you can log in and get started with that. I call that my insiders group, the Video Insiders Training. And you get a new video each week that shares with you a new principle, a new technique, a new strategy. And you get to apply those strategies as you go on a weekly basis. And the final way that people can work with me is one-on-one coaching, where we do Zoom calls and we talk about the biggest challenges you're facing, and we create a strategy and tactics for you. We talk about your challenge, your objective long term. We create a strategy and tactics for you, and then you apply them. In the following week, we meet again and we talk about your success and your results, and we can make adjustments if we need to. And to talk to me about that again, you'd want to go and email me at kyle@drivenautismdad.com. And again, just put in coaching, or I do have a phone number hotline that you can text to. And you'll want to text the word coaching to the number area code United States of America, 1-208-614-0874 is how to contact me there. So yeah, join me on no matter what you do, join me on our Facebook page, Parenting at Home Autism Challenges in a Spirit of Love. Go there, join now. You'll start to see training and tips and techniques that are free. You can do that anytime you want. Or if you are interested in one-on-one coaching or our video coaching, send me a text to that says coaching to 208-614-0874, or email me and just put coaching in there to kyle@drivenautismdad.com. So that's the ways to contact me. So what I'd like to do now is open up the floor to any questions you guys may have. And I know you guys are on Facebook Live, so I will just quiet down now and wait for any questions you might have. So let the questions pour in. I'm open to answer any questions. I'll quiet down and see if we can come up with any questions now. So, and just so you guys know, there's a delay. So he will be forwarding questions to me in the Zoom chat, which I will be answering that way. So let's see. I'm just going to wait for questions. What would you say is your first response to a meltdown? Perfect. Okay. So my first response to a meltdown is I'm not going to be surprised by it. We talked about this, right? Assume there will be meltdowns. That's the APWEC method. I'm going to assume there will be meltdowns. I'm not going to be shocked anymore. Okay. I, why would we be shocked when our kids have meltdowns? They have meltdowns. That's who they are right now. Our goal is to help them get through that meltdown and show them love during that meltdown, right? So my first response is to not be surprised. The second thing I do, and I walk through this, right, is to prepare myself mentally and physically to face this meltdown in a spirit of love, right? I don't need to join in the chaos. I need to be the calm in their storm during the meltdown. Now, and I'll wait for another question, but the really interesting thing about this is a lot of parents, they don't want to discipline. We want to discipline our kids. We want to teach our kids discipline, but we don't want to discipline autism. And way too many parents mistake bad behavior for autism. And it's hard to tell the difference sometimes, right? It's hard to tell if it's a overstimulated meltdown or they just want what they want and they're expressing bad behavior. Because my kids, oh, they were capable of being bad. Okay, let's just be honest. They were capable of it. And so the cool thing about what I do is, even if whether it's bad behavior or whether it's autism, it doesn't matter. I'm going to face it in a spirit of love. I'm going to be a kind and loving parent and help them overcome that challenge. Whether it's bad behavior or a meltdown, it doesn't matter. I'm going to do the same thing every time. Assume there will be meltdowns, prepare myself mentally and physically to face that in a spirit of love, win through kindness and patience and love, have energy and endure to the very end, right? And then celebrate myself. And that way, my kids, when when you can express love to your kids in their hardest moments, it really shows them you love them. They don't just, way too many of our kids, we tell them we love them, but they might not feel it by our actions. This way, they can feel it by our actions. So, great question. Hopefully, that's helpful. Any other questions anybody has for me? I don't see any more questions coming in, so I'm going to wait for just a few minutes here and then finish up. I tell you what, here's what I'll do. I'll remind you again. For those of you, please go and join our Facebook page. It's called Parenting at Home Autism Challenges in a Spirit of Love. That's a Facebook group. It's a private group. You'll have to request to join. And once you do that, you'll see a lot of tips and techniques. You can send me requests, questions, those kind of things on that page. If you are interested in working with me one-on-one, again, send either a text message to 208-614-0874. And in that text message, put coaching. Or you can also send me an email with coaching in the email to kyle@drivenautismdad.com. So hopefully that's helpful. I don't see any more questions, so I'm going to go ahead and log off. Okay. Thank you so much, guys. It looks like I can end the meeting. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for joining us on this live. And hopefully this has been helpful for you. Go home and use that app WAC. Use that cost formula. Start realize the answer to your family's challenges is not more therapy or more experts or more specialists. The answer is you as their parent. You are the miracle that your child needs to lower stress in your home, to become the very best parent you can be. You have the formula now, the recipe, and give your kids the very best chance at achieving their full potential, no matter what that may be. So you are the miracle your kids need. It's just going to take work on your side. And you might say to yourself, well, I'm too busy. I can't do any more work. Let's start working on stuff that actually helps. You're exhausted, you're overwhelmed, you're discouraged because you're working so hard and you're not seeing results. Try this formula and watch and start getting results, and then you're going to start using the right kind of effort to get the results you want. So hopefully that helps. My name is Kyle Jetsel. I'm the Driven Autism Dad. Thank you so much for listening, and reach out to me if you need me. Thanks. Bye-bye.